Good morning and welcome to this time together. I want to begin with these opening words. They were written by a minister close to where you are now, the Reverend Teresa N.S. Soto, and it's called Holy Quiet. And it goes like this. My prayers for these stressful days have become sharpened, unadorned. A single word to the bereaved and wailing Mother God, mercy. 2 words to the infant child God on trial in an unjust system, tender love. And for the God who is not a white-robed, bearded father, but a migrant laborer daddy with a red baseball hat, who only cries when he thinks no one can see. Not a word, but a silent squeeze of his calloused hand to telegraph reconciliation, wholeness. There was a time when more words brought comfort, but now my heart wants most to be true. Ready for resistance by unapologetic clarity and fueled by moving toward a future in which we have made all of us free. Welcome. So I am the Reverend Audette Fulbright Fulson, and I am bringing you greetings from Manhattan, New York. I serve as the Associate Minister at All Souls, New York City, and we are entering into our 202nd year as a congregation, and it's a joy to be able to serve here on the Upper East Side of Manhattan in New York. I also have had the joy of serving in the Midwest. I come from the South and I've served congregations in the South, and now here I am in Manhattan. I also have a special connection with you because the year that Barbara and Bill started at the Berkeley congregation, I started seminary at Star King well over 20 years ago now. And so the first place that I was ever able to preach was actually there in Berkeley. And so it has a very special place in my heart, as do Barbara and Bill. And I have followed along with your journey throughout all of these years. So it's a special pleasure to be with you this morning. And I ask you just to breathe deeply and prepare yourselves for this time of worship, this time of being together.
Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. My name is Cynthia Asperdides and I'm today's worship associate. We are very pleased to have Reverend Audette Fulbright Fulson serving as our guest minister this morning. If this is your first time here, we're so glad you've come. This is a welcoming congregation, and we're always working on how to better welcome and care for one another. Whoever you are, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are. As we begin, we want to acknowledge that this church occupies land in Huichin, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land. We acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is deeply felt and commit our congregation to be in right relationship with Indigenous communities, aligning in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. Please take a moment now to prepare yourself and your space for our time together. You might get a candle and a way to light it so you can join in the chalice lighting at home. Now, let us kindle our candles or the inner flames of our hearts with these words. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. I invite you to share in the comments where you are by writing, "I carry the flame," in whatever town or city you are joining us from. And now, please join us in singing our opening hymn, "Over My Head." The words will be on screen.
Over
Please join me in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
Hold out your light, yes, you heaven-bound soldier. Hold out your light, you heaven-bound soldier. Hold out your light, you heaven-bound soldier. Let your light shine around the world. Hear the children singing. Hold out your light, you heaven-bound soldier. Hold out your light, you heaven-bound soldier. Hold out your light, you heaven-bound soldier. Let your light shine around the world. Singing, oh, preacher, can't you hold out your light? Oh, deacon, can't you hold out your light? Oh, leader, can't you hold out your light? Let your light shine around the world. Oh, preacher, can't you hold out your light? Oh, deacon, can't you hold out your light? Oh, leader, can't you hold out your light? Let your light shine around the world. Hold out your light, you heaven-bound soldier. Hold out your light, you heaven-bound soldier. Hold out your light, you heaven-bound soldier. Let your light shine around the world.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the Reverend Catherine Boyle. I'm the Director of Family Ministry here at UUCB. My pronouns are she, hers, and hers. This is the time for all ages, so if you're young or young at heart, get close and get cozy, because today we have a story from India. This story is The Dog and the Heartless King. Once upon a time, there lived a king who cared for nobody but himself. He had grown rich from the high taxes he had forced his people to pay. He lived in a beautiful palace, while the poor people who built it for him still lived in huts and hovels. The king's table was always heaped with delicious foods, while most of his people only had one plain meal a day, and sometimes not even that. But this heartless king, he did not care. If he had what he wanted, that was enough for him to think about. One day, a hunter came to the palace gate, intending to teach the heartless king a lesson. The hunter brought with him an enormous dog. The king was fond of hunting, and this enormous dog fascinated him. So the man and the dog were both welcomed into the palace ground. But this enormous dog, it was no ordinary dog, for its bark was like the roar of thunder. The first time he opened his mouth and barked, the awful noise shook the walls of the palace and frightened the king and all his courtiers. If the dog had stopped with one or two barks, the matter might have been forgotten. But again and again his fierce barking shook the earth. Before long, there was no resting between barks. Nobody in the palace could hear himself talk. The king was desperate and sent for the hunter. He asked, "Why does your dog make such a deafening noise?" "The dog is hungry," said the hunter. Well, immediately, the king ordered that a big plateful of meat be brought. In almost no time, the enormous dog licked the plate clean. Then, at once, he began barking again. And so a second plateful of meat was brought, and this was just disposed of just as quickly as the first. And then again, the dog began barking over and over and over. The plate was filled, and over, the enormous dog made short work of it and began barking as loudly as ever. The king was furious. He called the hunter and said, "You and your dog, you must leave this palace at once. We cannot endure this noise any longer." But the hunter was firm. "Your Majesty, we have been sent to you by one greater than you are. We are here to stay." At this, the king was frightened. He grasped the arms of his chair and stared at the hunter. The king was not accustomed to having anyone speak to him in this manner. "Will nothing satisfy this hunger of your enormous dog?" he said at last. "Nothing that's easy for you to give," said the hunter. The hunter considered. He might be satisfied if he were given the flesh of his enemies to eat. "Who are the dog's enemies?" asked the king in surprise. "Those who are keeping the people of this country always hungry. Those who are eating all the food there is, and who are not dividing it with those who do the work in the fields to make the food grow. Your Majesty, so long as there are any people in your kingdom who are kept hungry, this dog will bark." On hearing the hunter say this, the king was even more frightened than before. It had never even entered his thought that he had been doing anything wrong. He had supposed that the people of his kingdom should always do exactly what he wanted. It had never occurred to him that a king should think of the happiness of anyone except himself. He was now angry from his head to his feet, inside and out. Either he would go mad from hearing the continuously barking of the big dog, or something else would have to be done, and very quickly. So he called his wise men together and said, "What shall I do?" The wise men bowed their heads and walked off to think over their question together. But try as they could only see two possible things. Either the dog must be killed, or every hungry person in the kingdom must be fed. No one was brave enough to offer to kill the huge dog. So that meant that there was only one thing left to do. Everyone in the kingdom must somehow be fed. The wise men were very clear in their minds about it. They returned to the king and told him plainly what had to be done. The king hesitated no longer. "Put all the servants on the palace ground to work at once," he commanded. "Go to the storeroom, get all the rice you can find, pile them high on carts, take any meat from my cupboard, gather the vegetables and the fruits from my garden. Send people out with these loaded carts into the towns and into the villages of my kingdom. Command my servants to find all the people who are hungry and give generously of these food until not a single person in this land is hungry." The wise men hurried away to do as their king commanded, and soon there was shouting and laughing and hustling and bustling all over the palace. In fact, the royal servants made so much noise that they forgot to listen to the barking of the enormous dog. Presently, a long line of carts piled high with bags and baskets of food rolled out throughout the palace gate. All day long, day after day, the carts kept going until they had gone to every village in the land and until food was taken to every house where someone was hungry. At last, the day came when the enormous dog really stopped barking and laid down quietly beside the king's chair. The dog was satisfied. All the people inside the palace were happy and at peace in their mind. Everywhere in the land, everyone was contented. The heartless king had learned his lesson.
Now, we enter the time in our service that we make for our hearts and our spirits, for our cares and concerns for one another. We lift up both our joys and our sorrows and any challenges that we may be facing. During our time of communal silence this morning, I invite you to share any joys or sorrows or significant milestones of your own in the comments. I invite us all to hold these cares in the compassionate embrace of our loving community. May we hold all these and all cares and concerns still unspoken in our loving embrace. May we also be held. Amen. And now let me turn this over to Reverend Audette Fulbright Fulson.
Will you join me now in a spirit of prayer and meditation? I invite you to take a deep breath in, releasing it fully, settling your attention on this current breath of now. This is the holy moment, this heartbeat, this breath, this opportunity to gaze at your beloved. This is the holy moment. We rush through our days and tumble through our nights, too often crowded with worries for the future and regrets of the past. We lose ourselves in mindless entertainment or careless banter, and we fail to notice the exquisite beauty of a hand touching our own, or the sunbeam falling gently across the floor, the surprise glory of a blossom lingering late on a springtime tree. Our lives are full of wonder that we pass by too quickly, minds adrift in some other place or time. Just for today, grant us the gift of attention. Let us see one another. Let us lean into the full burst of laughter or weep with those undone by the burdens that they carry. Let us be a blessing and a gift to each other, the balm of our attention offered like a ripe peach, the whisper of the names of our gods on our lips in every moment. The words of Hildegard de Bingen ring out, Holy Spirit, the life that gives life, you are the cause of all movement. You are the breath of all creatures. You are the salve that purifies our souls. You are the ointment that heals our wounds. You are the fire that warms our hearts. You are the light that guides our feet. Let all the world praise you. Amen. Ashe, blessed be.
What wondrous love is this that
Our reading this morning, titled These Roses, is adapted from the writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson. These roses under my window make no reference to former roses or to better ones. They are for what they are. They exist with God today. There is no time to them. There is simply the rose. It is perfect in every moment of its existence. Before a leaf bud has burst, its whole life acts. In the full-blown flower, there is no more. In the leafless roots, there is no less. Its nature is satisfied, and it satisfies nature in all moments alike. But we postpone or remember. We do not live in the present, but with reverted eye lament the past, or, heedless of the riches that surround us, stand on tiptoe to foresee the future. We cannot be happy or strong until we too live with nature in the present above time.
These are chrysalis times, times in which it seems like we're all individually and collectively struggling through to something new, though to what we may not be sure. Unitarian Universalism is struggling, trying to survive in a world that is becoming more secular, trying to live into a new iteration of our multi-faith, multivocal, multicultural vision. Our country is struggling, wrestling with deeper truths about our history and the vulnerability and the lived realities of too many. The sturdiness of our democratic republic is shaken. We're struggling to end a global pandemic, newly aware of our interconnections, both with the health of our bodies and the health of our planet. In the United States and elsewhere, we're struggling with the very real nature of trauma, discovering its effects in our lives and the lives of all those we love. We know too much to return to ignorance, and yet the path forward is unclear, and where it leads, equally uncertain. So what does the next chapter of the human story reveal? When one lives in liminal times, and when does one not, there is an essential spiritual task at hand: to cultivate attention. This morning, Mary Oliver is our spiritual interlocutor. Our text: attention is the beginning of devotion. Attention is the beginning of devotion. This is the last line of her poem, Upstream, and more from this too will be part of the text today. Indeed, we'll be in conversation with two Oliver pieces this morning, of Power and Time and Upstream. But if you need something to hold on to after we have gone from each other, it is this: attention is the beginning of devotion. In an Atlantic article touching on the impact of Mary Oliver, Franklin Foer notes, in the age of surveillance capitalism, the biggest corporations redirect the gaze, exploiting the psyche's vulnerabilities for profit. Even silenced phones light up with the notifications that break eye contact, disrupt concentration. Facebook, the ultimate manipulation machine, arrays information to exploit the psychic weaknesses of users with the intent of keeping them on its site for as long as it can. The hand touches the phone upon waking, even before it can rub the eye or reach across the bed to wake the spouse. While society has grown a little wiser to how the technologies can be exploited by foreign governments and boiler rooms spewing misinformation, the costs of allowing our attention to be commandeered remains drastically understated. Oliver's poetry captures its spiritual costs. In a world where the average attention span has decreased to a breathtakingly brief 8 seconds, it should be noted that listening to a sermon or even a song is an incredible act of resistance and transformation. Attention is the beginning of devotion. After all, what is unnoticed cannot be understood, nor can it be loved. So, Mary Oliver knew the pain of losing focus, of dropping attention. In Of Power and Time, she said, "It is a silver morning like any other. I am at my desk. Then the phone rings or someone raps at the door. I am deep in the machinery of my wits. Reluctantly, I rise. I answer the phone or I open the door. And the thought which I had in hand, or almost in hand, is gone." Creative work needs solitude. It needs concentration without interruptions. But just as often, if not more often, the interruption comes not from another, but from the self itself, or some other self within the self that whistles and pounds upon the door panels and tosses itself splashing into the pond of meditation. And what does it have to say? That you must phone the dentist, that you are out of mustard, that your Uncle Stanley's birthday is 2 weeks hence. You react, of course. Then you return to your work, only to find that the imps of idea have fled back into the mist. I, Audette, was very young when I first noticed that many of the writers I admired most had suffered long childhood illnesses in which their love of writing and the written word was born in the imposed idleness of being bedridden. Creativity itself is often the spawn of boredom. Any of us whose childhood was unadorned with computers knows a different kind of empty hours than what we know today. Technology allows a different kind of creativity, especially a creative interplay and possibilities for collaboration that were difficult to impossible in the days before the internet. And yet, there is something in us that connects more deeply when experienced through connection to the natural world than mediated through technology. Oliver writes in Upstream, "One tree is like another tree, but not too much. One tulip is like the next tulip, but not altogether. More or less like people, a general outline, then the stunning individual strokes. Hello, Tom. Hello, Andy. Hello, Archibald Violet and Clarissa Bluebell. Hello, Lillian Willow and Noah, the oak tree I have hugged and kissed every first day of spring for the last 30 years. And in reply, its thousands of leaves tremble. What a life is ours. Doesn't anybody in the world anymore want to get up in the middle of the night and sing? In the beginning, I was so young and such a stranger to myself, I hardly existed. I had to go out into the world and see it and hear it and react to it before I knew at all who I was, what I wanted to be." Wordsworth himself studied himself and found the subject astonishing. Actually, what he studied was his relationship to the harmonies of the natural world. That's what created the excitement. That's what she says in Upstream. In one of my all-time favorite movies, Harold and Maude, the 79-year-old Maude asks 20-something Harold what flower he would most like to be if he could come back to life as a flower. "Oh, I don't know," he demurs. "One of those, I suppose," he adds, gesturing at a field of thousands of wild daisies. Maude asks him why, and he says, "Because they're all alike." "Oh, but they aren't," Maude immediately protests as the camera zooms in on the flowers. "Some are taller and some are shorter. Some grow to the left, some to the right. Some are missing petals, all kinds of observable differences." Maude is showing Harold and all of us the same truth that Mary Oliver and every great spiritual soul has known, that every living thing and even every breath is full of particularity. It is all wonder all the time, if we have but the grace to notice. All is wonder, and beyond each stunning and gorgeous small difference, everything is connected. Hildegard de Bingen, consumed with passion for what she knew of God, put it like this: everything that is in the heavens, on earth, and under the earth is penetrated with connectedness, penetrated with relatedness. Good people, most royal greening verdancy, rooted in the sun, you shine with radiant light. God has arranged everything in the universe in consideration of everything else. Not all of us are swept up in such an overwhelming experience of God so regularly and so utterly. And yet each of us can be utterly consumed with attention. Oliver again. To pay attention, this is our endless and proper work. The writer Brandon Stoisoy notes, something I do now and then is ask my kids to look around the room in our house or other familiar place and point out a few things to me that they've never noticed before. A shape in the plaster molding, a mark on the floor, a pattern on the side of a lampshade. It's interesting to watch familiar things defamiliarize and then come back into view. How might you defamiliarize yourself with the small part of the world you inhabit? How might you connect with the royal greening verdancy that surrounds you? How can you more deeply explore the endless wonders of your own mind, or discover the miracle of blood and bone, water and wildflower? If we're wondering what the next chapter will or should be, and we're hungry to write a better world rather than succumb to the dystopian visions that divide and demoralize us, in Power and Time, Oliver notes, in creative work of all kinds, those who are the world's working artists are not trying to help the world go around, but forward. Intellectual work sometimes, spiritual work certainly, artistic work always. These are forces that fall within its grasp, forces that must travel beyond the realm of the hour and the restraint of the habit. Nor can the actual work be separated from the entire life. Like the knights of the Middle Ages, there is little the creatively inclined person can do but to prepare themselves, body and spirit, for the labor to come, for adventures are all unknown. In truth, the work itself is an adventure, and no artist could go about this work, or would want to, with less than extraordinary energy and concentration. Attention is the beginning of devotion. Any spiritual leader worth their salt will claim the same. The popular Christian author Philip Yancey tells a story about a rabbi. A rabbi taught that experiences of God can never be planned or achieved. They are spontaneous moments of grace, almost accidental. His student then asked, Rabbi, if God realization is just accidental, why do we work so hard doing all these spiritual practices? And the rabbi replied, to become as accident prone as possible. We can cultivate attention, to make our way through a chrysalis time, through liminal spaces. To pay attention is to enter the house of grace and become a student of life itself again. To pay attention. This is our endless and proper work. Let me end here with more sacred text from Mary Oliver's Upstream. For to pay attention to the one who pays attention is to learn from a master. I walked all one spring day upstream, sometimes in the midst of the ripples, sometimes along the shore. My company were violets, Dutchman's breeches, spring beauties, trilliums, bloodroot, ferns rising so curled one could feel the upward push of the delicate hairs on their bodies. My parents were downstream, not far away, then farther away because I was walking the wrong way, upstream instead of downstream. Finally, I was advertised on the hotline of help. And yet there I was, slopping along happily in the stream's coolness. So maybe it was the right way after all. If this was lost, let us all be lost always. The beech leaves were just slipping their copper coats. Pale green and quivering, they arrived into the year. My heart opened and opened again. The water pushed against my effort. Then its glassy permission to step ahead touched my ankles. The sense of going toward the source. I do not think that I ever, in fact, returned home. Do you think there is anything not attached by its unbreakable cord to everything else? Plant your peas and your corn in the field when the moon is full, or risk failure. This has been understood since planting began. The attention of the seed to the draw of the moon is, I suppose, measurable, like the tilt of the planet. Or maybe not. Maybe you have to add some immeasurable ingredient made of the hour, the singular field, the hand of the sower. Teach the children. We don't matter so much, but the children do. Show them daisies and the Pell Hillotica. Teach them the taste of sassafras and wintergreen, the lives of the blue sailors, mallow, sunbursts, the moccasin flowers, and the frisky ones, inkberry, lamb's quarters, blueberries, and the aromatic ones, rosemary, oregano. Give them peppermint to put in their pocket as they go to school. Give them the fields and the woods and the possibility of the world salvaged from the lords of profit. Stand them in the stream, head them upstream, rejoice as they learn to love this green space they live in, its sticks and leaves, and then the silent, beautiful blossoms. Attention is the beginning of devotion. May you find the blessings of attention and remember that you are loved. Amen and blessed be.
As we commit together to making this a loving community, we take time to remember that UUCB needs our gifts and support. We invite you now to make an offering. Each week, half our offerings are shared with a Good Neighbor organization who needs our financial support. We are so glad you continue to practice generosity with our Good Neighbor organizations during these difficult times. Our Good Neighbor for August is the Diablo Valley College START program. START is a foster youth support program whose goal it is to increase access, retention, and graduation rates for current or former foster youth who attend DVC. Mercedes Lazama, START's program coordinator, has recorded this short video.
What I find the best, the most rewarding of working with foster youth is being able to see them transform from students who came in wanting something different for themselves but not necessarily having direction to students who are then flourishing and thriving.
So how I felt before learning about the START program, I was really unsure and scared that I would have been able to even go to college. I didn't think college was for me, and thankfully from the support of the program I realized that college is for me, and that I can do it no matter what comes my way. I am a DVC student.
Beneficial. You get school supplies, if you're lacking support in an area, they find a way to help you to meet your needs. If you need help with your classes or a letter of recommendation and you're doing good, then they really support you.
Forward. So in the START program, what we really work on is making sure that the student has not only all the steps completed to get into school, but has the resources available to them to make them as successful as possible.
Offerings of any value are received with gratitude. Details on how to give electronically will appear on your screen as our offertory begins. Thank you.
When I was a child each week, on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest. And he would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread. Everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad that miracles don't happen still. Now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips. But now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. There used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Read a questioning child's face and say it's not a testament. That'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come and say it's not a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush, singing like a scripture verse. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now.
Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service. It's been good being together again today. Before we shift to our Zoom coffee hour or say goodbye, let me remind you to check out our website, uucb.org. There, among many other things, you can find a link in News to the week ahead, our weekly newsletter, and to the Beacon on the Hill, our monthly publication. The website is rich with information. As we prepare to leave the worship service, here are a couple of announcements. Please join the Social Justice Council's Literature, Film, and Drama contingent today, 12:30, to discuss the UUA's Common Read for 2021-2022. Breathe, A Letter to My Sons by Imani Perry. We are thrilled to welcome our new office administrator, Caitlin Vincent. She will be joining our UUCB staff. Stay tuned for an introductory letter. Now, please join in singing our closing hymn, We Would Be One. The words will be on screen.
We would be one, as now we join in singing our hymn of love, to pledge ourselves anew to have a cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for the meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
It's been a great blessing to be able to be with you this morning to offer a time of gathering and worship. And I wish you all blessings in your journeys together as you go forward. Today, these words of benediction were written by Nelson Mandela. The time for the healing of the wounds has come. The time to build is upon us. We pledge ourselves to liberate all people from the continuing bondage of poverty, of deprivation, of suffering such as gender and other discrimination. There is no easy road to freedom. None of us acting alone can ever achieve success. We must therefore act together as a united people for reconciliation, for nation building, for the birth of a new world. As you go out into your day, remember, you are not alone. There are Unitarian Universalists gathering all across the United States, in other countries, all around the world, and we are together as people traveling this road. So be well and be blessed.